Hello and welcome to A Deeper Dive with me, Dara Cam. Today, in the aftermath of the Supreme Court's two blockbuster decisions on abortion, we will be focusing on the constitutional amendment that will appear on the November ballot, Amendment 4, and we will be also talking about the upcoming 6-week abortion restriction, a new law that will go into effect on May 1st that will restrict abortions after 6 weeks of pregnancy with limited exceptions. So today we will be talking to proponents of Amendment 4. We will have folks from the other side of the issue on another episode. So today we will be talking with a family medicine doctor who provides abortions, and we will be talking to the executive director of the Florida Planned Parenthood Alliances, and we will be speaking with a political consultant who is working on the campaign. Stick with us. Lots to talk about. Abortion, top of the ticket issue in Florida right now.
We cannot absorb the 84,000 patients that we just served last year in the Southeast, maybe not even in the country.
So what are they going to do?
I mean, this is a public health crisis. It really is.
You're listening to A Deeper Dive with Dara, a podcast by the News Service of Florida.
Welcome to A Deeper Dive with Dara. That's me. And we are going to get right into it this week. We had major blockbuster rulings by the Florida Supreme Court, sort of competing rulings. We had one ruling upholding the state's 15-week abortion ban, which will trigger the 2023 law restricting abortions to 6 weeks of pregnancy with some exceptions. And we also had the court, in a split decision, 4-3 decision, approve the Amendment 4, the proposed constitutional amendment that would limit government interference in abortions. It would enshrine the right to abortion in the Constitution. So we have with us today two special guests. Laura Goodhue and I go in the Wayback Machine, as you guys always hear me say. Laura Goodhue is the executive director of the Florida Alliance of Planned Parenthood Affiliates. I think I got that right. And we have with us Dr. Chelsea Daniels, a family medicine physician who is the staff physician of, here, help me out, Dr. Daniels, it's a mouthful.
It is. I'm a staff physician at Planned Parenthood of Southeast and North Florida. I'm family medicine trained, but I am an abortion provider.
Okay, so we have these two Planned Parenthood experts and providers with us today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Dr. Daniels, we're going to start with you, and I have a couple of questions. What are you seeing? Tell us what the landscape is right now with the 15-week abortion ban. Is that in effect? Is you're gearing up for the 6-week ban? What's happening at Planned Parenthood clinics where you are?
Gotcha. Yeah. So thank you so much for the question and for having us. The 15-week ban is in effect, has been in effect for many, many months. I started with the affiliate last summer, and it's been in effect the entire time I've lived here. So I have only ever worked at the affiliate under this 15-week ban. And even though the 15-week ban has been in place for so many months, there is still so much confusion about it among patients, because there has been this kind of lingering rumored 6-week ban. Mm-hmm. And I think that, we often take for granted that we're in the weeds of these decisions. And so we kind of are understanding all of the little details, but a lot of patients don't. And that stokes a lot of fear. So I have a lot of conversations with patients, even prior to the decisions being released Monday, about, no, we are still providing care to 15 weeks, not 6 weeks. Now that the 6-week ban was released on Monday, I had my first full day of patient care yesterday.
Right.
The fear has increased. Gosh, I don't even have a number. It just the look of panic on people's faces. They come in, they're like, I read that the 6-week ban passed last night. Can I have an abortion? And I would say the average pregnant person who I see is 8 to 11 weeks. It's really the minority of patients who are less than 6 weeks in that I serve. And part of that is because it is so difficult to know that you're pregnant under 6 weeks. And so the absolute look of terror on people's faces that I'm going to have to turn them away it's really palpable. And I think too, having to explain, the decision came out, but we have 30 days for it is really hard for people to understand and kind of feel, because they are so panicked and this is so scary for them. And I think they're worried that, we have a 24-hour waiting period in Florida, that they came to meet me today to sign their consent and that they're going to come back in a week for their appointment and we're going to have different news.
Right.
And I think that's an understandable fear, just given what we've seen in these restrictive states. So the South Florida community where I work, we're afraid, and I think rightfully so.
Well, I would imagine that people now would be rushing, people who need an abortion or want an abortion would be as you say, you're in a panic. I'm guessing you're going to be booked up for the next, because the law goes into effect in 30 days. So I think May 1st. Am I right on that? Laura, is that when it goes? And also I think it's important. Like the doctors are the ones that face the sanctions, right? Not the patients, or am I wrong about that?
That is my understanding. The trouble is that there are these exception clauses for abortion.
I was just going to ask you about that. They
exist in a lot of these restrictive abortion laws in Florida and in other states. The exception clauses are, trying to think of a nice way to word it. They're impossible to interpret, purposefully vague, specifically possible to interpret as a medical professional because they've been written by non-medical professionals. And I think what that leads to is a culture of fear and threat of penalty. And so it leads doctors to make decisions against their better medical judgment for fear of penalty, whether it be jail time or loss of licensure or being unable to practice medicine in a given state or in the country anymore. And creating that culture of fear, not just among patients, but among providers who have, like myself, who have the expertise and know-how and training and ability to provide this care is insidious and nefarious and just downright wrong.
And it could actually have like life-threatening effects on women seeking care, right? Because one of the exceptions is the danger of life-threatening complications for the mother, right? So I guess if you're erring on the side of caution, and on the other side of that caution is a woman whose health could be at risk if you don't perform the procedure, that poses a conundrum.
Right. And I think the problem with language like that, just as an example, is that there is absolutely no way to really interpret language like that. So pregnancy in and of itself, as an example, is a threat to the life of any pregnant person because pregnancy is a medical condition that increases rates of infection and blood loss and blood clots and diabetes and high blood pressure, all of which pose a threat to the life of the mother. So by such vague language like that, it is absolutely impossible to interpret medically. So taking that out of the discussion, right? So we're starting from a place where already pregnancy is a quote unquote threat to the life of the mother, just being frank. If I have a medical emergency in front of me, or if any doctor who provides this care has a medical emergency in front of them and feels compelled enough to say, I think that this is a threat to the life of the mother, at what point does this language, this judicial language, allow for us to act? Is it when this health threat that we medically have deemed is at a 50% threat to the life of the mother, or a 51% threat, or a 60% threat? Like, at what point will I not lose my license and go to jail? But also, I couldn't even calculate those numbers if I wanted to. That's not how medicine works, right? And so what's happening is that you're seeing patients at risk, who are being turned away because of the vagaries in this decision and the way that this legislation has been written.
I don't want
just to add that,
Sure, go ahead. This is Laura.
To certify this in writing. So the physician that's treating and knows the patient, they know their medical history, and then you have to find another physician who that's probably not their patient, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then they want to get to know their patient and their background. And so that's even a larger burden, especially when we, have a lack of people that can treat patients, period.
So you need 3 doctors. So they have to be 2 other doctors, or can it be including the provider?
2. So you need the provider and then someone
and
else.
one. Okay, so you have 2 doctors kind of sticking their necks out and saying, this is a necessary procedure, and kind of maybe crossing their fingers and hoping they don't get caught up in some kind of bureaucratic nightmare afterwards. Which
is the best case scenario? Well, not the best case, but we're also talking criminal felony.
That's right. There is a criminal. You're right. I'm sorry. It is a criminal. It is a criminal penalty. It does carry criminal penalties. The other thing I wanted to ask Dr. Daniels was, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm going to put you on the spot. How are you going to, what? I'm assuming Planned Parenthood, I know they have a cadre of legal experts, but how are you going to make these decisions? What kind of a calculus are you going to use?
Yeah. I guess the first word that sprung to mind when you said, how are you going to make these decisions, was painstakingly, because I think that it is absolutely, I'm not a lawyer, and I didn't go to law school. I'm not trained to read judicial decisions and interpret them and interpret case law to inform my medical practice. But that is essentially what we have all been asked to do when it comes to these patients in front of us, because if we feel so compelled by a patient case that we wanted to bring it to legal counsel, for example, we would have to already have that kind of intimate understanding. And I think that places a really unfair burden on medical professionals who should not have to be considering the legality of their medical decisions on a day-to-day basis. And when you think about that notion with any other medical anything, it's absolutely outrageous. And the example I always use, because I feel like this is super relatable, is diabetes. Imagine
I have type 1. Let me interrupt you. I have type 1 diabetes. I've had diabetes for 40 plus years. So
yeah, I mean, not perfect for you, but perfect that you'll understand.
Yes.
Imagine you go to your doctor and your doctor wants to tinker with your insulin, but is afraid that if he or she does so, he could go to jail. And that's really how it feels, is that I'm just making medical decisions that I have been training for 15 years to do, and I'm suddenly worried I could go to jail for them. And I'm suddenly worried that if the false choice that has been put in front of me is go to jail or have a patient suffer potentially deadly consequences. Which
could also create some liability for you as well as a physician. I mean,
and it's so antithetical to the practice of medicine. This is not what medicine is supposed to be about. So I think, we have, like you said, a cadre of attorneys who do all this heavy lifting for us. So I don't want to, I'm not sitting there and reading case law.
Right. No.
Thank God. But I think that it's going to, it already is hard under the 15-week ban making these kinds of decisions about, I'm worried that there is a fetal anomaly. I'm worried about a patient's health, and feeling kind of under the gun in terms of making these decisions in time for 15 weeks. I just had this scenario a couple weeks ago with a patient who was 8 weeks. And so she basically had 7 weeks to figure out whether or not there was an anomaly. Now imagine rolling that back to 6 weeks and she would have already been too far. And I mean, it's unimaginable. It's not something that I don't think anyone can be prepared to do as the patient or as the provider, because it's just, it's inhumane. And so I think that I'm going to have to take it patient by patient and probably have lots of good cries in between patients and lots of pep talks with the team. But one of the nice things about working where I work is the team is amazing. My Planned Parenthood affiliate is amazing and so supportive and understanding. So I do feel like I have, an army of people behind me and next to me who are here to support and talk me through these challenging medical complications, legal implications. So
I wanted to ask you to address something, and I've been trying to. I've been asking folks as I'm writing about this issue about what the opponents of the amendment and anti-abortion advocates, such as the House Speaker, Paul Renner, they maintain that the proposal, the ballot initiative amendment 4, would allow abortion until the moment before birth. I looked up some data yesterday, and according to the State Agency for Healthcare Administration, 7,600 of the 84,000, roughly, these are rough numbers, of the 84,000 abortions performed in Florida in 2023 were in the second trimester, or, so that means that the vast majority occurred before 13 weeks of pregnancy, and there were no abortions in the third trimester. What have you had conversations with folks about this, like this fear about, the argument that it would allow abortion up until like the minute before birth?
Yeah, I've had conversations like this with folks since I feel like the dawn of time about this fear that it's completely baseless. And I know that I'm probably preaching to the choir with some of your listeners. But this notion that doctors are in the business of killing babies is just completely baseless, medically and scientifically inaccurate, and frankly insulting. We know we have really good data that shows that when you put no restrictions on abortion care so that people can freely and easily and safely and legally access this care whenever they need, like you said, the vast majority are seeking care in the first trimester. So this notion that abortion restrictions are going to, cause people to have, abortions later in pregnancy is just simply not true. And then my second point is that there are folks who are having abortions later in pregnancy, and this is the vast minority, vast minority, and it is typically in these really outlier cases. So fatal fetal anomalies, like unimaginable fetal anomalies, right? The cases that become sensationalized in the news stories are often the ones that we see. So it's not only is it the minority, and so it's happening really rarely, but this idea that we're doing it in the 11th hour is just, it's not true.
Well, that was Dr. Chelsea Daniels. She is a family medicine physician with the Planned Parenthood affiliate in Southeast and North Florida. Yes. Thank you she has to scoot, and Laura and I are going to stick around. So thank you very much, Dr. Daniels, for joining us, and we'll have to have you back on later in the year.
I would love to. It was nice to meet you, and good to see you, Laura. Take good care, everyone.
Thank you. We have a new email address, and we'd love to hear from you. To reach us and give us your input, tell us what you'd like to hear. Tell us what you thought about what you already heard. Tell us how fabulous we are. Join the Deeper Divas team. Send an email to podcasts@e.newsserviceflorida.com. That's podcasts@e.newsserviceflorida.com. And I promise I will read everyone. So it's something we didn't ask Dr. Daniels about, Laura, that I want to ask you about, that this ban May 1st. Did you say that I was correct with the May 1st or?
That's right. Yeah,
Okay.
that's what we're planning for.
The May 1st ban restriction, 6-week restriction, will make Florida sort of the whole southeastern United States, the South really, an abortion desert. I hate to use that term because it kind of feels like it's making light of a situation, but I was on a press call with the governor of North Carolina, the Biden campaign, and the governor of North Carolina, and he said that North Carolina was the only state that didn't have as many restrictions. Maybe you can tell us what the scenario is in the point being there's nowhere to go.
No, I think, and we heard from Dr. Daniels that most of her patients are between 8 and 11 weeks. I mean, you can't really drive home the fact that people do not know that they're pregnant. So it makes it virtually meaningless, a 6-week ban. I think another thing that, Planned Parenthood health centers are preparing for is training other people on ultrasounds, because we'll have to get people in so quickly. The hurdles are just so insurmountable. To even verify the dating through an ultrasound when it may not show up. I mean, pregnancies usually don't show up to like 4.5 to 5.5 weeks, if we're lucky. So yes, it's and we've been working since the 15-week ban, and since other states have, been facing these restrictions since Roe v. Wade fell, to send people other places and work with other Planned Parenthoods and other independent providers. But when people are facing these criminal penalties, and it's hard to even train doctors to become providers, and it was never easy to recruit and retain doctors in the first place at abortion clinics. I think there's just a lot of problems in terms of people needing care. And I think Dr. Daniels said it really well. And that's why it shouldn't be political. It should be, governed by, and certainly reasonable regulations make sense. We all want to go to a doctor that has our best interests at heart. They all take the Hippocratic Oath. They're all licensed by boards of medicine, etc. But this is just extreme. That's really interfering in people's lives.
Right. So, but other states in the South have similar Texas has a 6-week ban in
Texas has nothing. Most of them, so let's see, Texas, Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, like the deep South, there's no place to go.
Right.
I believe Georgia has a 6-week, and it's hard to track because it's also in the courts up and down.
Oh, right.
So, it's also hard to know. Again, that's a more like politics in your life. You can't even plan where to send them.
So you wonder, there's a part of me that feels like, I'm old enough to know women who had abortions before Roe v. Wade. And I have heard stories about, the stories that women have been telling for many, many years, very horrific experiences.
Yeah.
And there is, are we creating sort of a classist healthcare system in terms of access to abortion, where people who can afford to fly to a state where that procedure is available will be able to obtain it? I don't think anyone in Florida is suggesting that they're going to, punish women who go out of state to get the procedure. I think there are some legislators in other states who have suggested that. But is it going to become is there going to be a lack of economic parity in terms of access to care?
There already is. And there honestly, Roe was honestly the floor, not the ceiling. People still have trouble accessing, birth control in Florida consistently, because we haven't expanded Medicaid. Just to get there, we don't have sexual health education in the schools. And so there is a class economic barrier already. We have a high number of uninsured in Miami. And that, when you don't have good medical care or availability of doctors, people will have unintended pregnancies and they won't be able to take care of it. In terms of people getting abortion care, like pre-Roe, yes, you'll see the people that have the time to take off school and work and figure out where to go, honestly, just navigating the system on their own. And Planned Parenthood has patient navigators, but, we're ramping up funding, but they've been we've been funding that since the 15-week ban went in effect, and we never have enough money to help people travel. Now it's just the need is exponential to provide funding, and it's unnecessary. So we are asking donors and charities, to support, and we're working in a network with foundations and providers, when we could be using those resources to expand care instead, right? To address the fact that people don't have insurance, to address the fact that we have overburdened foster care system. But no, now we have to, help people that can't navigate this system, whether it's economics or, whatever it is, because they're, a young person, because they've been discriminated out of the healthcare system. That's what we have to switch to doing, which is just another part of this tragedy.
I was going to ask you what I started to say about I love is that I do appreciate it when the interviews unfold organically. So you're answering some of the questions that, and so did Dr. Daniels, that I had scripted for myself. But, I was going to ask you what Planned Parenthood is doing to help women obtain services out of state. You mentioned that you are helping with travel, relying on foundations and other organizations. Where do people typically, where would they be going? What kind of travel are you talking about? And do you have an estimate of how much that would cost per patient?
I mean, that's really difficult to tell, the cost per patient, because pregnancies vary so much in the needs. Before, beyond 15 weeks, it was definitely different, depending on the medical situation, usually medical situations. Now it's just, I think it just depends on where we can find providers. And we do have agreements in place. So we're referring people, ideally to another Planned Parenthood facility, but also with independent providers. North Carolina they have a 12-week ban, and they're busy.
The governor said their clinics are, this was his word, stretched thin already before the 6-week ban, Florida's 6-week ban went into effect.
There's 55 licensed providers in Florida today, or the last time I looked at the Agency for Healthcare Administration's website in Florida, and they're busy. Planned Parenthood's busy. So there's a demand. There are people that need these services. So if there's 55 health centers in Florida, and I can tell you all over the deep South, those states that I named, like, Texas, Louisiana, Alabama, they don't have any. And then Virginia, North Carolina, maybe a handful, but they do not have 55. We cannot absorb the 84,000 patients that we just served last year in the South, in the Southeast, maybe not even in the country.
So what are they going to do?
It's a public health crisis. It really is. We're going to try and get them in Planned Parenthood. We're going to do our best, but
well, you also do other services. You do contraception services, and so it's not just, abortion isn't the only service that you provide.
It's not at all. We provide lots of education, and we are expanding. We've expanded to fertility treatment. We are doing a lot of education and launching a campaign around, just ovulation and understanding your menstrual cycle and pregnancy. And we need to do this for young people as well as other people, right? But I think I mentioned this before, the schools really don't have this information. We've also seen an attack on health education and in keeping yourself, healthy and preventing unintended pregnancies. We have pregnancy prevention packs, with pills and condoms, as well as emergency contraception at Planned Parenthood. So a lot of it is awareness. But again, people that are seeking abortion weren't trying to get pregnant.
Meanwhile, you have, not you personally, but there's going to be this campaign to get Amendment 4 passed. It requires 60% approval. The efforts in other states, now I think all of those other states have 50, just a simple majority.
Florida's the only one with 60%.
Florida's the only one, but they have been successful in, I believe, 7 other states.
I think that's the number. I know Michigan, it was first. Ohio was the most recent one in a special election. And then those were like proactive. And then there were some really great no campaigns in Kansas and Kentucky. So some states that trend more conservatively.
Yeah, California, Kansas, Kentucky, Michigan, Montana, Ohio, and Vermont.
Yeah,
Successful.
I think Montana's got one that they're trying to propose right now, a proactive one. They might have had a defensive one.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, they have the ones that have been on the ballot, not to ban abortion, but to protect abortion rights, have passed. So thoughts about Florida, the 60% got, a kind of in Florida has been a red state. Everybody, I'm among the reporters this week who's been writing stories about how the Democrats and progressives are galvanizing around abortion as a top of the ticket issue. President Biden's campaign said, this puts Florida into play now. So what are your thoughts? She's rolling her eyes for those of you who can't see.
I am, because it's in play for patients. And I think this partisan politics is part of the reason we're in this issue. And I want to say, and I'm also somebody that's worked on ballot initiatives in Florida for the past 15 years.
Right. I think that's how we first met. Right.
Yeah, I was working on minimum wage or something, but I think in healthcare is not partisan. Our patients don't come in as Democrats and Republicans. I was in Palm Beach yesterday at a coffee with some ladies who were Republicans, and they were telling me about their 20-year-old daughters who were saying how proud they were of them for being champions of reproductive rights, Republican women in Palm Beach Island. So this is not, I think that, and that's why I did roll my eyes when you said that Biden said that, okay, but the reality is that 1.5 million Floridians signed the petition to get this on the ballot. They petitioned their government, and many of them, were either independently thinking voters that simply want to stop government interference.
But do you think that it's going to drive, since you've worked on ballot initiatives before, do you think it's going to drive up turnout? It is an issue that people feel deeply about.
So, yeah, I think it will. The question is, will it drive out Democratic turnout or will it drive out turnout in general? I think it's going to drive out turnout in general. I do believe that, because people care. You also have recreational marijuana on the ballot.
Yeah.
These are issues that people now have time to educate themselves about, to think about, where they may not know who the candidates are that are running, but they know a little something about the issue. And people know that they don't want politicians interfering in their health care. So I do think it's going to increase turnout because they have something to vote on.
What do you think is going to be the biggest challenge to getting Amendment 4 passed?
I think the education of voters and the expense in a state this big, because there will be an opposition campaign. They've already started. And I think, getting doctors and, Dr. Daniels has to go serve patients today on day 2 of, understanding that a 6-week ban is coming. So she has very limited time to really talk to the voters about this. And so I think it is education. And that's always without in a state this big, it costs a lot of money because, to get the word out. Politicians in power right now, many of them have a microphone already because they're in power. They're the same ones that pass these restrictions, right? So they get to speak first or louder because they're already there. And so to get the words out, for it to get, to have patients heard and nurses and doctors, that's a little bit harder and costs some money.
Thank you so much, Laura Goodhue. Is there anything that you'd like to add that you want our listeners to know before we say goodbye?
Yes, the website for the Yes on 4 campaign is floridiansprotectingfreedom.com, where you can find out and educate yourself and get involved.
Okay, well, there you go.
Floridiansprotectingfreedom.com.
Okay, there you have it. Thank you very much, Laura Goodhue, Executive Director of the Florida Alliance of Planned Parenthood Affiliates. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch up again later on this year.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
We are back now for our final segment of today's show with Ashley Walker. She is a general consultant working with the Florida Women's Freedom Coalition, and they are working on the campaign. Ashley, nice to see you again. Welcome to A Deeper Dive.
Thank you for having me. It's great to connect with you again, Dara.
Yeah, we've known each other for many, many years. people are tired of him hearing me say that, but I when you've been around a long time, that's what happens. So I wanted to just get you to explain to us what your role is in the campaign and your organization. I know there's a lot of different entities involved in this effort.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me and to talk about this important topic. I work with Florida Women's Freedom Coalition. They are part of the coalition of groups that are spearheading the campaign. And so very excited that we finally met this milestone of getting on the ballot. We've been all working for several months, but excited to finally meet this milestone and see some good work, and excited that all of this labor is going to good end.
It was really iffy, actually. I have to admit. Fortunately, I didn't make any. I didn't make any bets on this, but I have been saying for a few months that I've been predicting, and I was wrong. This is why I need to get out of the prediction business again. I was predicting pot yes. The Supreme Court would say pot yes, abortion no. I was right. I was 50%. What I had a 50. What is it? A 0.5 batting average on that. So I think I'm not the only one who was taken by surprise. Maybe you guys felt were more optimistic, but I'm not the only one that was taken by surprise by Amendment 4 being placed on the ballot.
Yeah, I mean, we were excited. It was a little bittersweet, right? We were very excited to get on the ballot so that voters would have an opportunity to have their voice heard on this important issue, but very saddened by the fact that a 6-week ban is going to essentially go into effect in Florida next month. So it was a little bit of a bittersweet day, but we are all optimistic and feel good and about the campaign that we're about ready to embark on and what we're going to be able to do. And we know that Floridians across the political spectrum, believe that there should not be government interference in women's health care. And so we feel good about our chances, and, our goal is to make us be successful in November by getting this passed with over 60%, so that, these extremist abortion bans are done once and for all here in Florida.
You've been involved in Florida politics for a minute, let's just say that, and so what's going on the ground here. I was talking to another consultant who's not involved in this campaign at all, and this morning, and this person was saying, hey, the Democrat, and actually we had a guest on the show earlier today who kind of rolled her eyes when I said that the Biden campaign is using the abortion issue as an opening in Florida. How much truth there is to that, I don't know, but I'm wondering if you all on the campaign are trying to sort of distance yourselves from Democrats who are going to use the abortion issue. I've gotten hundreds of emails already from Dems, about the abortion issue. Is there going to be an effort to try to, I'm going to make up a word here, departisanize this? I've spoken with 2 Republicans from your organization who are in favor of Amendment 4. In the past, we had them on the podcast. So do you get what I'm asking here?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally understand what you're asking. I think abortion is a nonpartisan issue. I think we are seeing support from across the aisle. Democrats, Republicans, independents across Florida are overwhelmingly supporting this effort. And the campaign that the Yes on Amendment 4 team will pull together will be a campaign that does not focus on partisanship, because this is something that affects all women across and families across Florida, regardless of party. And we'll be making sure that we're taking that message to voters so that they understand that this is not a partisan issue. This is an issue that is important to the healthcare and the safety of women and girls across the state of Florida. And I think that transcends politics. And, we saw this demonstrated in full effect during the petition collection phase. I mean, we were able to get hundreds of thousands of petitions, not just from Democrats, but also from Republicans and independents. And I think it just shows that this issue transcends politics. And I fully expect in November that there will be people that will vote for various candidates up and down the ballot, on both parties, but then also vote yes on this particular amendment. And we are looking forward to mobilizing support from across the political aisle, across the geographic spectrum, across racial communities, and really make sure that everybody understands what is at stake this November on this particular amendment.
What, in terms of the campaign, thank you for that. And in terms of the campaign, what's next? What are the next steps? Like, what is your first immediate task at hand now that you know that you will be on that ballot?
Well, the first immediate task is fundraising. We really have to, it was a very expensive process to get on the ballot.
I think 20 million. Was it $20 million?
It was just, I think we're at about 19 million so far raised. And,
okay.
Politicians in Tallahassee have made this process to be a very difficult and expensive process. And so, we're just excited that we're now finally able to move forward to phase 2 of this. And that's going to require funds to be able to get our message out. So the first immediate thing is right now today, we're all fundraising. But once we are able to come up from air from that, because there's been just an overwhelmingly positive response from here in Florida and across the country of people wanting to make sure that we're successful. We're going to develop out a comprehensive plan that reaches voters where they are, to educate them about what this ballot amendment is, what it's not, and make sure that they have the information to make an informed decision. That'll include TV ads, mail, digital, face-to-face conversations, phone conversations. There will be no stone unturned in our effort to make sure that we're reaching Florida voters. We're fully expecting a lot of misinformation to be circulated. We're already seeing that come from opponents of this effort. And so it will be critically important that we do everything we can do to get our message out. And we'll be developing plans to do that. And we'll be spending the resources necessary to ensure that we're able to do that successfully.
Do you have an idea how much you think it'll cost for this campaign?
I mean, these campaigns historically across the country have been tens of millions of dollars. I think in Ohio they were around $40 million. This is this type of a race. This type of race is one that will be on par with a traditional U.S. Senate campaign, and so it's going to be a very expensive but worthwhile endeavor. I mean, we oftentimes kind of think about all the money that is required to do this, and it really loses the human touch of this. And I think the thing that we often make sure we're grounded in is just remembering all of the patients across the state of Florida and women that will be left with, very limited choices in May when this draconian extremist 6-week ban goes into effect. And we really try to center our decisions and make sure we're really keeping grounded in the fact that there's a lot of patients and there's a lot of women across the state that are going to need services, and probably for several months are going to have to travel out of the state. And that's a very important issue to keep at the forefront as we're doing this work, because it is very important work that affects people's lives in very serious very serious ways.
Well, thank you very much. Ashley, is there anything that you'd like to add before we say goodbye for now?
I just, encourage folks to visit Florida Women's Freedom Coalition.com. We'll have a vote center on there. We will have ways that people can get engaged, and want to make sure people have all of the information they need. So visit Florida Women's Freedom Coalition.com.
Well, thank you very much, Ashley Walker, political consultant, a general consultant, with the Florida Women's Freedom Coalition. Thanks for joining us. We'll have to get you back on here soon.
Thank you for inviting me, Dara. It's great connecting.
A Deeper Dive with Dara is hosted by Dara Cam, produced by Ryan Daly, and music for the podcast was recorded by Periodic Labs, LLC, and performed by Ryan Daly and Danny Reyes.